It started with a letter printed on thick, overpriced paper and signed in blue ink by a man who referred to himself as the president of the Lakeview Heights Homeowners Association. He wrote with a smug cordiality that suggested he believed every word to be a favor. The letter extended an invitation for me to join the HOA, emphasized the mandatory nature of this invitation, and contained thinly veiled threats about community standards, bylaws, and shared responsibilities. I folded the letter and tossed it into the fire pit on my back porch without responding. You see, I didn't move to Lakeview Heights to make friends or participate in community barbecues. I moved here because it was quiet, private, the kind of place where the sound of your neighbor's dog barking might be the only sign of life for hours. That's what I wanted after 30 years on the federal bench, with countless high-profile cases and too many enemies to count. I didn't need to be liked, I needed solitude. A week after the letter, I came home from the courthouse to find my mailbox torn from its post and my trash cans overturned, a petty move, clearly intended as a warning. I installed cameras the next day. The HOA sent another letter, this one less pleasant. They demanded I attend the next board meeting or face consequences. I wrote back a single line, I declined. That was the last time I gave them the courtesy of a reply. The petty harassment escalated, noise complaints about my home, despite the fact I lived alone and rarely even turned on the television, citations for non-compliant landscaping, because I'd let the trees grow naturally, a demand to repaint my house because the shade of gray wasn't on their approved color chart. I ignored them all. I had dealt with cartel lawyers, foreign diplomats with immunity, and domestic terrorists who considered me a target. A group of middle-aged suburban tyrants in matching polo shirts didn't scare me. Then, one night in early August, it happened. I had just finished reading a deposition when I noticed a smell, burning plastic, thick and noxious. I looked out the window and saw a flickering glow from the side of the house, flames rushing up the exterior wall like a living thing. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, but it was already too late, the smoke was overwhelming. I got out through the back door, coughing and choking, and stumbled barefoot into the backyard. My phone was inside. I had to sprint to the edge of the property to the neighbor's place and pound on the door until they woke up and called 911. By the time the fire department arrived, my home was fully engulfed. Nothing could be saved. The fire marshal later determined the blaze started from a Molotov cocktail thrown against the siding, deliberate, targeted, not an accident, not even close. That's when I knew, the HOA never anticipated I would survive. They certainly didn't expect what came next. See, I had kept my profession under wraps, a habit learned through decades of careful living. Most of the neighbors thought I was just some retired bureaucrat. But that fire changed everything. Within 48 hours, I was in contact with the FBI. Within 72, federal marshals had been dispatched. What the HOA didn't realize is that I had been a federal judge for more than 30 years. I had friends in places they'd never imagine, clerks who now ran powerful departments, prosecutors who owed me favors, and agents who considered me family. And I wasn't about to let some smug HOA president get away with attempted murder. The investigation began quietly. Surveillance footage showed two men in masks fleeing the scene. Their movements, however, matched the gait and posture of two HOA board members, Gerald Wires and Mark Covington. A search warrant for Covington's home uncovered accelerants, bottles with cloth wicks, and a notebook containing detailed surveillance notes on my routine. It even included the time I usually went to bed and when I let the dog out, except I didn't own a dog. They must have mistaken the neighbor's pet for mine. That mistake would become their undoing. Both men were arrested within the week. Under pressure, Covington broke first. He claimed it had been a message, not a murder attempt. He said the president, Franklin Blaine, had pushed them to make the judge comply. They thought scaring me would do the trick. I was sitting across from Blaine in an interrogation room 3 days later. He wore a pastel polo, his collar stiff with self-importance. He looked me in the eye and tried to play dumb. I didn't say a word at first, just stared. Finally, I leaned forward and whispered, you know who I am now." He swallowed hard. The charges stacked fast. Conspiracy to commit arson, attempted murder, intimidation of a federal officer, and a host of lesser crimes. But that wasn't all. It turned out Blaine had been running the HOA like a private empire: embezzlement, misuse of community funds, fraudulent citations. He'd weaponized the HOA to control the neighborhood, extort residents, and silence dissenters. My case opened the floodgates. Dozens of complaints poured in once others realized they wouldn't face retaliation. People who had been afraid to speak up for years finally found their voices. It wasn't just a criminal matter now, it was civil, federal. A full investigation launched into the HOA's activities. Their books were seized, their accounts frozen. And I watched it all unfold from a temporary rental, sipping my morning coffee as the local news aired footage of federal agents escorting Blaine out of his McMansion in handcuffs. In court, the trial was swift. Covington pled out for a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony. Wires tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. Blaine's attorney argued mental illness, stress, coercion. I didn't need to testify, the evidence spoke for itself. But I did show up for sentencing. When the judge handed down 25 years, I met Blaine's eyes. He looked away. Eventually, I rebuilt, not in Lakeview Heights, of course. That place had become toxic, and the HOA was disbanded by court order. A special administrator took over, and the neighborhood's property values plummeted along with its reputation. I bought land a few counties away, this time even more isolated, trees for miles, a private road with a gate and security. I made sure of that. Occasionally, I get asked why I never revealed who I was earlier, why I didn't just show them my badge, demand respect, and shut it all down from the start. But here's the truth: power only matters when it's used at the right time. If I had flexed early, they'd have hidden, dug in, covered their tracks. By letting them underestimate me, by allowing their arrogance to lead them into overreach, I gave them the rope, and they tied the noose themselves. They thought I was a retired nobody, a quiet neighbor, just another target to bully into submission. They never saw the robes. They never saw the courtroom until it was too late. Now, every so often, I get letters from law students, young attorneys, even judges just starting out. They ask me about justice, what it means, when to seek it, how to wield it. I tell them this: justice isn't a hammer. It's not about striking first. It's about watching, waiting, and knowing when the hammer should fall. And sometimes, it falls hard enough to shape the very ground beneath your feet.